right. Hey, Julie Ryan, welcome to the Edge Television broadcast.
Thank you. Delighted to meet you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, it's good to have you on. And man, with the discussion we're going to have tonight about health and disease and things like that, it's like there's only like two subjects in the country: COVID and politics. So why don't we take a break from politics and talk about maybe about getting healthy, or talking about how we what we may have. Julie, you have is it a gift that you can perhaps see what a person has?
No, I learned how to do it, Daniel,
Oh,
and I teach people how to do it. I tell people I'm an inventor and a businesswoman who learned how to do woo woo, and I'm a buffet of psychicness. So
wow.
I can I can scan you medically. We can talk to your dead grandma. I can scan your cat. We can do past life stuff. I can do,
Mm,
uh, talk to angels, talk to spirit guides. It's
okay.
just
Hey,
all,
just,
yeah.
just a little clarification. Is that a nutcracker back behind you to your left?
It's a Santa.
Okay, because it's good because I don't know what the word is, but I got a phobia on nutcrackers because I mean they got those teeth that like that, and I'll tell you, if you got one of those set up at night, you can see their eyes follow you across the room. I don't.
Oh, funny. I have a whole bunch of them in my family room in an alcove
Yeah.
above some bookcases. So I'm glad you won't see those.
Okay. Well, Julie, you say you sort of trained yourself. How did that all begin?
Oh, I didn't train myself. I took 6 years worth of classes
Oh, I thought you said
to
you. Oh,
learn.
that's how you learned it. Okay. Okay.
I learned it. Yeah. Somebody gave me a book, a girlfriend gave me a book called Anatomy of the Spirit. And the woman who wrote it is a PhD named Carolyn Mace, and she called herself a medical intuitive. And I thought, what the heck is that? I'd never heard of that term before. And I was in the medical device industry, Daniel. I'm an inventor of surgical devices that are sold throughout the world.
Hmm.
Sold my manufacturing company about 5 years ago. So I'd been in that industry for a long time, and I'd never heard that term before. And I read her book, and then I wanted to know more. And this was 30 years ago. So back then we didn't have the internet yet. So I did the old fashioned thing, and I went to a bookstore.
Oh.
I went to a Barnes and Noble to see what they had. And I found a book called Hands of Light by Barbara Brennan, who, interestingly enough, is a former NASA physicist who parlayed very complex quantum physics theories into understandable English for the layperson like me.
Hmm.
And she talked about using energy fields to help facilitate healing. And that really piqued my interest. So I called her school and I said, do you have anybody in my area teaching this stuff? And lo and behold, there was. And this woman, her name's Susan Austin Crumpton, she's been my dear friend and mentor for 30 years now. So I paid the equivalent really of what I would have paid to get a PhD
Hmm.
or an MD, uh, learning how to do woo woo. And now I teach people all
Mm,
over the world to do
mm.
it. But like everything, it's so much easier to teach now because it's so much more compact. What took long periods of time to learn and absorb, now we do it in 8 hours,
Hmm.
basically over four
Hmm. Hmm.
weekends.
Over time, I've had folks on the show. This show's been going on since 2004, so you're about the thousand something guest. So
Wow.
I don't know what to do with all the information. I mean, I process it, but I look for every guest. I look for the nuggets of gold that are hidden in a conversation. And I know there's the sort of the peripheral things we talk about, but some of them have said that that could see auras or
Uh-huh.
colors. Now, your bio says that you can see illnesses and maybe perhaps even when somebody. So I have people on talk about auras, and now the good news for me is a couple times they said that I got a good color. So I feel like I'm doing good. But your bio says you can actually see somebody who's like near death. Is that true?
Well, not only that, but also, Daniel, I'm like a human MRI. When I connect with somebody, I turn my abilities on and off at will. I don't walk around scanning people because I don't think that's ethical, let alone I don't really want to know. Imagine being in a crowd of people and saying, okay, that one's got heartburn and that one's got indigestion and that one's got whatever. So I can see in my mind's eye, I'm like a human MRI, and I can see broken bones and torn ligaments and viral infections,
Ooh.
bacterial infections, tumors, cancer. I can see metastasized cancer. I can see whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really fascinating. And then as far as people who are dying, absolutely, I can tell how close to death someone is by a configuration of angels and deceased loved ones who are there to greet the person who's dying and lead them into paradise, lead them to heaven. And it's quite fascinating who shows up. And when I'm describing to the family members, okay, there's this lady with white hair, and she's got her hair in a bun in the back of her head, and she's got this little white sweater with pearl buttons up the front, and they all say, oh, that's Grandma Ann. They know exactly who it is.
Wow.
So yeah, it's pretty interesting. And this amalgamation of spirits, pet spirits as well, the spirits of every pet the person's had in their lifetime. And it's really fun, Daniel, when I'm working with somebody who grew up on a farm or lives on a farm, because there's farm animals there. There are horses and cows and chicks and pigs and
Mm-hmm.
animals like that. And I'll say, did your grandmother grow up on a farm? And they'll say, yeah, she did. And then I'll describe what the pets look like. And they'll say, oh, that was her cow Molly or her collie Sam or whatever. And it gives that family so much comfort because we're adding a glorious component to what is normally such a heart-wrenching time. Not to mention they're surrounded by angels as well.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people would like to know that they do have angels surrounding them. I think the Bible says we're surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, so I don't know if those include that. But I don't think it's that far of a stretch to suggest that somebody would have the ability, trained or gifted, to see something on the health in the health area of another person. For instance, there's always those that they used to look at your lifeline. Is that right?
Sure.
People used to look at the lifeline, and now other people will say they had premonitions. And you could say, I mean, I don't know how many people that is well documented. People have had premonitions of their death, their imminent death. I think even Abraham Lincoln may have had that. I mean, but so I don't know that it's that much of a stretch to say that somebody else might know, because humans have been looking for the knowledge of when that day is for a long time. But I think in the celestial realm or spiritual realm, there probably are areas that give us at least some clue.
Oh, absolutely. And to your point, I believe that we all come in with the ability, and it's just a matter of developing and then nurturing it and enhancing it. And we've all had situations, Daniel, where we think of somebody and then all of a sudden we get a text from them, or they call us, or we run into them or something like that. And we say, oh, what a coincidence. Well, that's no coincidence. That's your intuitive ability. And as a mother, I can tell you, when our babies are little and they're waking up in the middle of the night before they even wake up, we know. The time for about the 3 o'clock feeding, just because we can feel them or sense those babies, even if they're in a different room, we can sense when they're starting to stir, even before they had baby monitors. Mothers throughout time have been able to sense that. Dads, not so much. I think maybe dads do, and they just use the excuse that they don't, so they get to sleep through the night. I don't know. There may be a conspiracy.
I never let my feminine side out, so I couldn't talk about that. See, because I'm I don't do that. But there is also classic videos of dogs knowing when somebody's coming home. And it's been proven, because they say, well, you come home at the regular time. No, I'm talking about videos where a person runs varies from the routine, and the animal picks that up. And for evolutionists who say we come from animals anyway, that you would think that would be easily translated perhaps into you made a pineal gland or some part of the human that has kind of we've done away with because we're so smart. We don't need to think like that anymore. But so there are definitely, I'm not making a case for you. What I am saying is, before you're dismissed, for anybody who's watching dismisses everything, and I'm just coming with an open mind.
Sure.
So and like I said, I'm looking for gold. I'm looking for the gold nuggets in this conversation. Maybe you're looking for some this way, and maybe we'll even get some from our questions that are coming in for you. So let me go ahead and get a couple of those for you.
Okay, terrific.
And there are a bunch of them in there right off.
Right.
Well, Doreen 8951 says, "Please look into my health. Am I close to death?" That's kind of scary. I mean, is that not something you want to do, is it? Or is
Sure, I'd be happy to. Where is she located?
You want to go down there? Okay. Well,
Yeah, sure.
All right. Doreen 8951. You've been asked the question by Julie. Where are you at? Because I don't know. Let's see if she answers there. And then while we wait for that, let's go to the next question.
And Doreen, tell us what's going on, just for my time consideration.
Okay.
What's her issue that's
here
happening.
we go. Right.
This is what I do for my show, Daniel. My Ask Julie Ryan show, which is weekly, and people call in from all over the world and they ask Julie Ryan, about health, about their pet's health, about past lives, about whatever. Love life, careers, should I move?
Okay, I'm not going to ask you if I'm going to hit the lottery. I'll let somebody else get that one. Okay.
I gotta know.
Okay, she's in Chicago.
She's in Chicago, and what's going on with her?
All right, now Doreen, is something going on? Okay, she has back pain.
Okay, all right, and she thinks she's dying because she has back pain. Okay, so this is how this works, Daniel. Doreen, I raised my vibrational level to the level of spirit because we're all spirits attached to a body having a human experience. And when we're attached to a body, we vibrate more slowly simply because the body has mass. So I raise my vibrational level, takes me a nanosecond, and I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to watch a laser beam come from my body here in Birmingham, Alabama. It's going to hook into you, Doreen, in Chicago. And then I'm envisioning shooting energy from your feet up through the top of your head. I'm looking at a hologram of her in my mind's eye, Daniel.
Okay.
And I'm looking at you from behind, Doreen. And it looks to me like you've got a herniated disc on the left side, low back. And it looks like you have some disc degeneration as well. So it looks to me like your spinal column is starting to collapse a little bit on the left side. I use these analogies, Daniel, that sometimes are really hilarious, but it gives our human minds a frame of reference for this woo-woo stuff that we're talking about. And so when I'm working on somebody's back, and you'll appreciate this, I always say, imagine looking at a rack of baby back ribs. The ribs represent our vertebrae. The meat in between the ribs represents our discs. So she's got a bulging disc, and she's got two above it that are disintegrating, that are pushing down those vertebrae. Mm-hmm. So what I'm doing, Doreen, is I'm propping up, here comes the healing part. Okay. I'm propping up those two areas where the discs are degenerating, kind of like a rack of baby back ribs. When you eat the meat, the ribs start to collapse. There isn't anything to hold the ribs in place, right? And so I'm doing that. I've pushed the herniated disc, the one that's bulging, back in. There's this little netting that I apply from the top vertebra to the bottom vertebra, and it reminds me of really thin, stretchy, like a fish net that you'd use to get a goldfish out of a goldfish bowl. And that goes on the end, and it stretches from the upper vertebra to the bottom one, and it'll hold that disc in place. And then the two discs that are degenerating, I'm using stem cell energy, which looks like a light amber colored gel, has sparkles in it, of course, because it's woo-woo. You got to have sparkles when you're doing woo-woo, right? And it has kind of a watery consistency to it. And then there's a vortex that's formed above them, and it's that centrifugal force that regenerates whatever body part we need. And this stem cell energy stuff, Daniel, is so cool. I have watched it regenerate whole organs before that show up on subsequent scans, and I've had doctors call me and say, all right, what are you doing, and how's this stuff work? So that's what's happening, Doreen. And in the meantime, I've applied anti-inflammatory energy to help lessen the pain. Mm-hmm. So there you go. She got a healing.
Okay. Speaking of that, Jesus told his disciples to go forth, heal the sick, and raise the dead. Would you say that you're doing that with God or without him?
It is absolutely spirit, Holy Spirit, if you want to call it that. I'm a raised Catholic girl, 12 years at Catholic school. I believe it's the Holy Spirit working through me and with me. Mm-hmm. Yes. And interestingly enough, I studied Kabbalistic healing for 3 years, which is ancient Jewish mysticism. And there are lots of schools of thought. You know how the Bible stops at when Jesus is 12 and then it picks it back up when he's about 30?
Yes,
There are lots of schools of thought that he learned Kabbalistic healing when he was in Egypt during that time period when he was a young adult. And the interesting thing about Kabbalistic healing, Daniel, is that it's not written anywhere. It's only taught orally. Used to be only to rabbis who were over 40 that were married. And when I learned it, I was a Catholic woman. I had the married thing down, but I learned how to do it too. So It's interesting you brought that up. And is that feasible that Jesus learned that and it helped him with his miracles? I mean, certainly it was God. He could do it without it, but he was also here having the human experience.
Well, I'm sure everybody would be in agreement with that. I think it's, and that's one thing I try to make definitive declaratory remarks, but the one about we are spiritual beings in a organic body, I believe is absolutely true, and I can say it, and I would think the audience would say that. And if they don't think that, then man, they must live a pretty dead life because the body is going to just wilt away. Hopefully, there's something else. But we got this question here from our online. So we got two different sources: our chat from our YouTube channel is streaming, and from our website is streaming. This one's from our email client. This is from Canada. It says, Julie, decades ago, I knew a chiropractor that was a spiritist minister, and he could also talk to spirits and scan bodies for diseases, Dr. D. Palmer. The question, I don't know how this gets to here, but it says, have you ever encountered ET ghosts that are pestering humans?
Well, ETs or ghosts or both. And the answer is yes. Pestering humans, ghosts just don't know they're dead. They're spirits that don't know they're dead. And so I've helped, and actually there's a chapter in my book, Angelic Attendants, about spirits in this building that was an office building. And they didn't know they were dead. And so I helped them go into the light. One of my favorite stories about a ghost, though, Daniel, is a friend of mine. And this happened long before I met her, but she said when her kids were little, there was an evil ghost, an evil spirit, she called it, coming in her front door. And she said it kind of looked like a gargoyle. And so I can do an instant replay, like when you're watching a football game, and they make a touchdown and you go back and watch the instant replay. And so I did an instant replay of that scene. And I said, well, that wasn't an evil spirit. That was a spirit that was coming through her very thick wooden door, and its face got distorted, kind of like in the movies you'll see a robber put a pair of pantyhose, back in the day to distort their face. And it turned out we talked to the spirit, and the spirit was he was a Confederate soldier who was looking for his daughter. He died during the Civil War. And he was looking for his daughter, and his daughter had reincarnated as my girlfriend's daughter.
Whoa.
And so we got all this information. We got the spirit's name, we got where he lived, all that stuff. Everything was able to be corroborated with historical documents online. It's really fun when we have the opportunity to talk to a spirit and we get that kind of information. And past lives are really fun too, because we get all this data and I say, I can't make this stuff up. I mean, it's just too wild.
Okay. Let's get to a few more. This is Truth and Treasure says, Julie, how do you handle having a caller that says they know they're going to die very soon?
Well, I can scan them, and I have come up with this sequence of events that I alluded to earlier, where we're all surrounded by deceased loved ones and angels and the spirits of deceased pets. And this configuration changes over time, and there are graphics of this on my website and in my book. Ask Julie Ryan's the website. So if anybody wants to pull it up while they're listening to the show, you'll see it. It's called the 12 Phases of Transition. And it's a configuration of how angels are positioned. So I can scan somebody anywhere in the world, and I can tell in a nanosecond how close to death they are. And if the person who's dying can't communicate, I can communicate with them telepathically, which a lot of times comes in really handy because I can get information they're trying to convey to their family. I can get it to their family with them communicating with me telepathically. I have lots of stories about that. May I share my favorite one?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Go ahead.
I was working with a woman whose father was elderly, was a retired dentist, and he'd been off the ventilator for 2 weeks. They thought he would die within a matter of hours, and he was just hanging on and wasn't able to communicate, was basically in a coma. And so I always ask 3 questions when I'm scanning somebody who's dying. Are you ready to go? What do you need? Are you in pain? And he said to me what he needed his family to file his quarterly estimated tax returns. And the family's going, are you kidding me? I mean, that's crazy. So the daughter called me and she said, oh my God, what does he need? And so I talked to him and I said, he needs you to file his quarterly estimated tax returns. And she said, I don't even know where they are. So I'm asking her dad, and he said, they're in a desk in my bedroom, left side, middle drawer, something like that. So I said, just go to his house and see if they're there. And she did, and they were. And he had the check all written out, everything. And she put him in the mailbox, went back to the hospital, and he died within about a half an hour of her returning.
Whoa.
So he wanted, and come to find out, Daniel, we looked at that and we were thinking, really, what was that all about? Well, she was the executor of his estate. And by those taxes being filed and in the mail before he died and being postmarked on the same day, it saved her all kinds of headaches down the road when she was settling his estate. So I have lots and lots of stories like that are just, they're fun and they're magical and they're, again, you can't make this stuff up. It's just, it's really remarkable.
You talked about earlier about, you get ready to call somebody and then they call you type of thing.
Right.
Now, is that in intuition? Is that spirit? Is that synchronicity? What is that?
It's intuition. Yes.
Okay. So would that work in the text world? Like you get ready to text somebody, all of a sudden, bam, you get a text from them?
Absolutely.
Same thing? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so we can update that to technology.
Yes.
Well, I'm getting, my intuition is saying that some people probably watching the show are saying what you're saying is not biblical or not in the Bible. But, well, let me ask you this. One of my older brothers was getting crazy with his motorcycle, and he did a wheelie. He was up on one wheel, and he ran right into a light post. And it punctured his kidney. And he went to the hospital, and he was near death. And this story is told to me by my father, who said that he was at the hospital, and he was crying in the bathroom, and then somebody put their hand on his shoulder and said he's not going to die. He immediately turned around, and there was no one there. I got to say that's not in the Bible either, but I think that probably happened. So. Well, I'm not saying everything you're saying is true, but I'm just feeling that some people are maybe a little bit more dismissive than they should. Maybe there's some middle ground there between you're possessed by demons or you're telling the absolute truth. Somewhere, right. There's got to be somewhere we can talk to each other. We got to be able to talk to each other, and the people have got to be able to listen without feeling they're going to get took over by demons just by listening.
Well, you think about the Bible, and the Bible's full of stories. The angel appeared to Mary and said she was going to conceive. The angel appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, go back by a different route after Jesus was born. That's just the New Testament. Moses is talking to a burning bush. Saul was struck down and a voice was talking to him. That's all telepathic communication. That's what we're talking about. Not to mention, there are many indigenous peoples. For instance, the Australian Aborigines, the Aboriginal culture, they've been talking to each other, communicating telepathically for millennia. They go on their walkabouts by themselves. The men do, when they're boys. I don't remember how old, maybe 14 or 15 or 16 or something. And the people know when they're coming in from the bush, and they know all of that. People who... It's interesting because people tell me sometimes, it's pretty rare, but every once in a while somebody will say, well, I just, I don't believe that. I'm a Christian or I'm a religious person. I don't believe that. And I'll say, well, do you pray? And they'll say, well, of course I pray. I pray every day. I pray multiple times a day. And I'll say, great. To whom are you praying? And they'll say God or Jesus or whomever. And I'll say, well, is Jesus sitting on the couch next to you when you're having a conversation with him? And they'll say no. And I'll say, well, you're talking to his spirit. You're communicating telepathically. You're praying to a spirit. It's the same thing. Our heads are big satellite dishes, and they receive and they transmit frequencies. And when we pray and we get answers to our prayers, that's telepathic communication coming in from spirit.
Mm-hmm.
That's my explanation.
It seems like I remember Paul saying there's a time he was praying and he didn't know whether he was in the body or not. I think he said he was in the third heaven talking to some people. So another brother story just come to mind, and that is my older brother was dying here just in the last year. And before he died, he, in the hospital room, said he saw another brother of mine. I've had three. I got six brothers. Three of them died.
Wow.
But he...
God bless your mother.
She died. She died when I was 2. Man, there's a lot of death in my grandparents gone, parents gone. I mean, it's a lot. Hopefully, I'm still here. And my lifeline, man, it goes all the way around. So I'm pretty good. I mean, it goes around. It probably goes up in there. But he said he saw. He said his name was Leslie. He said, oh, there's Larry right there. Now I wonder if somebody would, at that moment, be so dogmatic they would go in the room and say, hey, you're talking to spirits. What's the matter with you? When he was dying. I wonder if somebody would have the fortitude to do that, because if you couldn't do that, then you shouldn't say that. I mean, you really need to moderate what you say to somebody who says that they've talked to a spirit. And I'm not saying in every context or in every way or anything. I'm just saying you got to think about if somebody would say to you shouldn't talk to spirits, would they say that to my brother? He shouldn't talk to spirits, because if they wouldn't go barging in and say you're talking to a spirit just before he died, then their line is just shifting around. I mean, they're going to have to go all the way, or be more sensitive, I would think. I don't know if that's good. All right, let me get to another question.
Well, let me say something about that real fast. My book talks about it from the spiritual side of the equation, and it talks about, okay, here's who's there. Here's who's here. I call it the Welcome to Heaven community, and it's deceased loved ones and friends and people like that. There is a book written by an MD, PhD named Chris Kerr, Kerr. It's called Death is But a Dream. And he is the chief medical officer and CEO of a very large hospice palliative care organization in Buffalo, New York. He has done university-based research on about 1,400 patients. His center cares for 1,200 patients a day, most of them in their home. But he's done university-based research on 1,400 patients, and I believe it's 88% of them report seeing deceased loved ones either in dreams or visions at the end of their lives as they're approaching death. And so it's quantified material. And the thing that's so interesting about it is they report that these are unlike normal dreams. They're more vivid. They're more crisp. It's almost like they're in high def, and they're always comforting. And most of the hospice literature, Daniel says, expect your loved ones to say they're seeing deceased loved ones or angels or religious figures.
Are they?
That it's very common. They absolutely are. Yes, because I can see them as well, because I've trained myself how to do it. And anybody has the ability. This is what I teach people all around the world, from physicians and lawyers and judges to housewives and engineers and all walks of life. Anybody that's interested in this, we all have the ability. It's just a matter of enhancing what we come in with. It's like the software is already there. We just got to start using it.
Okay, let's get to a few more questions. From Doreen again, she says, have you ever talked to Jesus?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
I mean, any praying person would. I mean, so are you talking about praying or like there?
Well, here's how it works. As I mentioned, our heads are like big satellite dishes, and they receive and they transmit frequencies. So it's almost like when you're listening to the radio, you can be listening to talk radio, you can be listening to classic rock. Talk radio is maybe 94.7, classic rock's 102.5. Every spirit has their own frequency, like a radio station, like the megahertz that the radio station is broadcasting on. Mm-hmm. And so how we connect with any spirit, whether it's a deceased loved one or someone you never met, you just think of them. They immediately are there. And how we talk to them, and anybody listening can do this. You say something to them, either aloud or in your mind, and they're going to answer you. It's going to feel like it's your thought. It's going to come in within a second. Oftentimes it will come in, the answer will come in even halfway through the statement or the question. And it's that first thing that comes in as fast as you can snap your fingers. If it takes you a couple of seconds, that's your brain talking to you. So the more you do it, the better you get at it. And then the more validation you get, the more comfortable you get, the more it becomes just second nature.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's get to a few more questions going on here. Let's see what we got. This is from Baby Wolf 1. Can you see your own illness?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
What does illness look like?
Well, my car hydroplaned a few years ago, and I was praying to Jesus because I was on an overpass that was about 40 or 50 feet up in the air, and I'm like, oh, sweet Jesus, do not let me come flying off this overpass. And I hit one of those cement barriers, that's on the side of the overpass, and my car spun and everything. So my car, I was able to drive it home, and my husband was waiting for me in the garage, and I went in, and I live in Birmingham. I was driving in from Atlanta, which is a couple hours. I said, I got to use the ladies' room, and then we need to go to the emergency room because my foot's broken. And he said, well, if your foot's not broken, you wouldn't be able to walk on it. I said, trust me, I can see where my foot's broken. Mm-hmm. And I explained where it was. And we got to the emergency room, and I said to the doctor who came in to see me, I said, okay, my foot's broken. Here's where it's broken. And he's looking at me like, lady, you're just nuts. And they did the x-ray, and guess what? My foot was broken exactly where I told them it was. So yes, I absolutely can see it.
Yeah. Now I mentioned in the first hour about colors. Is color associated with that in any way?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Inflammation looks like it's red. Looks like red fog over body parts. Anti-inflammatory energy looks like royal blue, and other colors. Sorry, I guess I forgot to mute my phone. Let me do that now.
Do you need to answer that? Go ahead. We got
No. Sorry.
It adds so much flavor to the show. We've had dogs walking by, cousins walking in the background. So it's fine. No. We're all family here, except for the ones that disown me for this show tonight. That's okay.
Those are the ones, though. What's really funny about people like that, Daniel, is they'll say, well, yeah, I just don't buy that. And I say, well, that's fine. And they'll say, well, you have to convince me. I'll say, no, really, I don't. It's your prerogative to believe whatever you want. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy to talk to you about whatever. You want to talk about the weather. You want to talk about football. The University of Alabama is playing right now. When we're done, I'm going to go watch the second half. What do you want to talk about? And then when I change the subject and I'll say, well, maybe this just isn't for you, then they come back and they say, no, let's try it. And then I'll nail something. Then they'll go, oh, okay, well, maybe this woman really does know what she's doing.
Okay. What does imminent death look like on someone?
Imminent death looks like phase 11 of the 12 phases of transition. Again, these illustrations are on my website. If your people are in front of their computers, they will pull up askjulieryan.com and go to the 12 phases of transition. There are illustrations there. But what it looks like, Daniel, is when somebody is dying, the spirit and the body are holographic, and the body is inside the spirit as I perceive it. And then there's a membrane that contains it. And it reminds me, here's an analogy for you. As I mentioned, I talk in analogies a lot to give our minds a frame of reference. Imagine going to the pet store and buying a goldfish. They're going to put it in a plastic bag of water in order for you to get it home. So if you have a picture of that in your mind's eye, the fish represents our body, the water represents our spirit, and the plastic bag represents our energy field membrane. So when the body is dying, the spirit is the power source for the body. And when somebody dies, the spirit and the body separate. And it comes out through the top of the head. Have you ever talked to anybody that's had a near-death experience? Have you ever had anybody on your show?
Lots.
Okay, so a lot of them talk about that they feel like they're going through a tunnel and they can see a light at the end of the tunnel. That's the spirit coming out through the top of the head, which in ancient cultures that talk about chakras, that's the crown chakra, that's the God center, that's the connection to the divine. And it hangs on to the top of the head, and it looks like a bubble you'd see in a cartoon with the words or the character's thoughts in it. And then the person is surrounded by angels, by deceased loved ones. That circle of angels, as they progress towards death, starts to open up into eventually morphing into a straight line. The other thing at the end of life, which is really interesting, is there's a vortex that forms above the person's head. And it creates a hole, and that's what helps the body and the spirit separate. And the vortex, as I perceive it, is caused by angel wings moving. Now, I picture angels like they showed me they look like in Catholic school. You know, big wings, white gown, big angels. Somebody in an indigenous culture may see angel energy and it looks like a ball of purple energy. It's all frame of reference. But near the end, Daniel, these wings start to move and they create a drag that causes this vortex. And it feels like when you go through a car wash at the end, you know, when that dryer's on and it's sucking all the water up your car, there's an upward pull for it. So when I was writing my book, I researched just for kicks because it reminds me of a giant owl, you know, whose wings are silent, but you can almost feel the drag when you watch it flying. And so I Googled just for kicks, owl vortex drag, and I got thousands of hits. There's this thing called the wingtip vortex, which is an aeronautical engineering phenomenon. That anything that flies, whether it's a bird or a plane or a bug or a whatever, there's this wingtip vortex that is present that causes the lift. So I thought that was remarkable that that's what I'm seeing to help the body separate from the spirit. One other interesting thing with the body being inside the spirit, I was taught originally in school that the spirit or the soul is someplace in the upper chest area. And that's not what I perceive. What I perceive is the body's inside the spirit. And if you look at pictures or paintings of Jesus or saints or people like that, oftentimes they're depicted with halos around them. That's their energy field. It's their aura. It's their, you know, it's the same thing. It's what we test when we're testing using an EKG machine or an EEG machine.
Well, there's that.
We're testing that electrical energy that's on the outside of the body.
Well, there's also that Kirlian photography.
Exactly.
That shows missing digits of your hand when you're not there. There is some kind of, and somebody can't say, well, that's a demon. No, it's a visible graph, a representation of some kind of energy there. That's again. Okay, let's get to some more questions. This is kind of one of my previous guests. He's a real cut up, but I'm going to go ahead and ask the question from Australian Ben. Is Nancy Pelosi or Joe Biden close to?
To die?
I don't even want to say it.
Not at the moment. Okay. No. Ben, great question.
The one guy broke his foot. I mean, that's something. All right.
Yeah, but that's not going to kill you.
Okay. Yeah, but hey, I had a guest on the program. I can't remember Hannah Bilips, and she said that she lived in the mountains of Kentucky, and that the military wanted her powers because she could see things, and so they want to harness that for military purposes. But she was on a horse, and then from her relatives says got thrown from a horse and broke her leg, and some bone went in her heart and killed her. So. Just a simple fracture, people.
Well, can I pick up on that military thing, though, real fast, Daniel? They're, for, decades, all of our military divisions, the NSA, the CIA, the FBI, all those guys, all the military intelligence, they have people that are psychic and that can do what's called remote viewing. I teach this in my class, where you can energetically be in another place and see things going on in another place. I do this all the time for clients who have a loved one that's having surgery, and I can see what's going on in the operating room. I can read the anesthesia equipment. I can tell you where they are in the surgical procedure. But the other people that use it are big tech companies like Google and Apple and those guys, and they're developing things. But back to the CIA and military intelligence, back in the day during the Cold War, they had people that were in those departments that could do remote viewing, like of where the Russian missiles were. And they would draw out what the configuration was, and they could identify latitude and longitude of where they were placed. And then with the advent of satellites, that stuff's been validated and verified, the drawings that these psychics did at the time. And then through the satellites, once that technology came into place, they were able to corroborate that. So yeah, that's been going on for forever. I mean, look at King Arthur and Camelot. He had Merlin. That it's been very common that rulers and popes and other people that were in positions of power used astrologers and psychics and those kinds of people throughout the ages.
I mean, a lot of dead people are getting out of the graves and voting. So I guess
that's right.
You don't know what can happen out there.
That's right.
But now just remembered that I'll talk about the previous guest, Hannah Bilips. Her family, give me a message, said, she died that way, but she must have believed in reincarnation, because 2 months later she was on somebody else's podcast. So I don't know how that happened. But maybe it was a graveside interview. I don't even know, man. Let's get to another questions all in here. When it comes to death, do you give dates or generalities?
Well, great question. The way that it works is we all decide when we go, where we go, how we go, who's with us when we go. And I can tell if somebody is progressing through the 12 phases of transition fairly rapidly, that they are on the way out. And I talk about that in my book as well. By the way, number one, time doesn't exist in the spirit world. Time is a human creation. So 100 lifetimes of 100 years may not even be a blip on the radar screen. That's number one thing that's important to remember. But the other thing is, we all go through the 12 phases of transition, whether we die quickly or instantly, perhaps in the case of a homicide or a suicide, or whether our death is over days, weeks, months, years. We all go through these 12 phases. And again, if time doesn't exist in the spirit world, that's feasible. The interesting thing about it is, when I first was seeing all these 12 phases of transition, the first person I saw was my own mother when she was dying in 2002. And at her funeral, it was Catholic, and at the end of every Catholic funeral, there's a prayer called In Paradisum. And it talks about how your loved ones will greet you, deceased loved ones will greet you along with the angels and lead you into paradise. And when I was writing my book, Daniel, I researched where did that originate. And the best I could find was it originated as a 5th century Gregorian chant. So I have to believe that people have been able to see these phases of transition since the beginning of time. And perhaps it just took till the 5th century till someone was well educated enough to be able to read and write and put this information down in the form of a prayer. And certainly some of the most well-educated people at that point were men, and they were either in monasteries or synagogues. And so I find that fascinating. It's in Plato, it's in Shakespeare, it's in Dickens, The Christmas Carol. We've all seen that. All of these references to spirit. It's in all the holy texts.
You mean Tiny Tim and Bob Cratchit?
Exactly.
I wish life could be like that, because I'm going to do a little rant here about Christmas. The lesson you get from the is it called The Christmas Carol with Bob Cratchit?
Christmas Carol.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
By Dickens.
So and in Scrooge, right?
Exactly.
So the thing is, he gets the biggest goose, and he pays for Tiny Tim's operation, and from then on, you could see that his life was going to be good. His life was turned around by these visitations. He was scared straight, you might say.
That's right.
But if we fast forward to today, in this reality, because that could have been a reality, in this reality, December 26th is the nastiest day in the country because everybody's going to the mall to return the gifts that they're cussing out whoever gave it to them, and they want their money back, and they're mad as heck, and they want it done now, and there's a line of people, and people are honking at each other. So it's like the Christmas message doesn't go to the 26th or on. I don't understand. Why does it stop in this reality?
Oh, I think it's all perspective. I think there are a lot of people that it does go on, and you're just paying attention to the ones that don't.
The bad press. You're talking about the bad press thing. Okay.
Well,
okay.
I just think that it's your perception of things.
Okay.
It's you can choose what you want to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to choose paying attention to all the snarky people. It seems like everybody's snarky, but at the same time, if you choose to pay attention to all the people that are thrilled with their gifts and thrilled to be with their family and friends, especially this year, if they have the opportunity to do that. I think it's what we focus on is what we receive more of.
So you're saying that accentuate the positive.
Absolutely.
Well, on that realm, I saw a video of this group of people went in a hospital, a cancer ward for kids, and they gave him a gift of a guitar, and then the guy starts playing it, and the doctor comes out with a gift, and then the nurses comes out singing, and everybody's traveling down the cancer ward singing and passing out gifts. That was heartwarming. So maybe I should watch some more of those videos. I mean,
Exactly.
I'm kind of done with cat videos. I think I've seen every one there is. So, but Jack Stan says, Julie, what are the 12 phases? I mean, is that something you can give us in a brief synopsis or?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I was mentioning before, the spirit exits through the top of the head and it holds on. It looks like a cartoon caption bubble. And phase 2 is when the mother's spirit shows up. So in my case, my mother's deceased. So if I was dying, her spirit would show up. It's the mother's spirit that runs things from the spirit world. I always thought it was angels or some saint or God or whomever was running it. No, it's the mother spirit, and it's the closest maternal spirit to the person who's dying. So for instance, if my mother was still alive, it would be my maternal grandmother if she was deceased. If she was still alive, it would be her mother, my maternal great grandmother. It's always on the mother line. And the interesting thing about that, Daniel, is again, in the Jewish faith, the child is not a Jew unless the mother is a Jew.
Right.
And so that's why when you hear of women who are Gentiles that marry a Jewish man and they want to raise the kid Jewish, their children Jewish, the woman oftentimes converts, especially if she's marrying into an Orthodox family. So I find that fascinating. And then the father spirit shows up. And they're always in the same configuration. The maternal spirit's at the person's left foot, the paternal spirit's at the person's right foot. Mm-hmm. So for instance, if my dad was still alive, then it would be my maternal grandfather. If he was still alive, it would be my grandmother's father. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. It's always on the maternal line. And then phase 3, angels show up. And it's a circle of angels. And as I alluded to before, angels look to me like what the statues look like, what the paintings look like, what I was brought up that angels look like. Is that what they really look like? Who knows? That's how I identify that energy, through my own frame of reference. And then phase 4 is that circle starts to open up into a horseshoe. And the horseshoe expands. And then phase 6, other spirits start coming in. And if the person's spouse is deceased, there's always a position where the spouse is, and it's catty corner to the right. It's like southeast of where the maternal spirit is. And then animal spirits start to arrive around phase 7, and then the horseshoe continues to expand, and there's more spirits that show up. And the interesting thing about the spirits that show up, Daniel, is they're in period dress. So they're from a bunch of different lifetimes. Like there could be people dressed from the Renaissance age and from the 1960s with mini skirts and go-go boots and stuff. And then this series continues and pet spirits show up, and then that vacuum starts to open above the head that I talked about before, about phase 9. Phase 11, they're ready to go. Phase 12, angels on either side of the spirit bubble carry the person off to heaven. Wow. Everybody goes to heaven, by the way.
So Do animals go to heaven?
Animals, no. Do animals go to heaven? Their spirits around, yeah, but every spirit goes to heaven. The animal
Mm-hmm.
spirits are around us here. They're around us. Is there a separate heaven for dogs or a separate heaven for cats? No,
Mm-hmm.
but their spirits are with their loved ones' spirits in the afterlife.
But don't you say that you can see sickness on animals?
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I scan humans, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And when a pet is dying, they do the same thing. It's a spirit bubble. They're not surrounded by angels, and they don't go through the 12 phases of transition like humans do.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, the spirit bubble is there, and
So,
if I'm scanning an animal that's not well, yes, I'll see what's going on with them from a medical standpoint.
so is that similar to like a 12-step, alcohol anonymous type thing, or what's the deal there?
Well, interestingly enough, let me look that up. Have you ever heard of the Bible numbers? I can send this
Like
to
the
you. You can share it
okay,
with
okay,
your
what's that?
listeners. The Bible numbers are when the Bible was written, it was an oral tradition. And people weren't literate until the
Okay.
last like 150 years. And so to keep the continuity of the stories intact, the Bible is full of numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And so the numbers from 1 to 12 signify something in the Bible. And 12 signifies fullness, new beginning, governmental perfection, 12 tribes, 12 apostles.
Okay.
So each number from 1 to 12 has a specific significance. Like 3 is divine perfection, 7 is spiritual perfection, 1 is unity, 2 is division. It's pretty interesting. I can send you this chart.
Yeah,
I
that's
refer
fine.
to it a lot, and it's interesting too with numbers when you see them in the Bible and you bring it down to its root. Like you got
Uh-huh.
12, 1 and 2 added together is the root of 3, right? Well, 3 is spiritual perfection, like the Trinity and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I
Wow.
find that really interesting about how the Bible used numbers
Well,
and
yeah.
that the traditions were that people understood those.
Yeah, there is something out there known as the Bible Code. So I
Yes,
don't know, and those are equally spaced numbers that indicate there's some supernatural aspect to it.
right. I've heard about that.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is different. This is basic stuff about the numbers that are in the Bible.
Hmm. Uh, People deal with numbers all the time, and they can make numbers do anything. Does a person's life, like their birth date and their age, and some other number in their life, do those have meanings? If somebody were to add them up, or is there anything they could see from that, or is that just coincidence if it comes up with something?
Well, there are lots of schools of thought about that. I'm not schooled in any of them as far as the numerology stuff and the astronomy stuff and the astrology stuff and where were the planets positioned and all of that. I am not an expert. It's fascinating when that happens. The thing that I hear the most about are numbers that are in a sequence, like 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 1, 1, 1, or 4, 4, 4, or whatever. And what I have received as far as spiritual guidance on that is it's just letting the person know that they're in alignment with
Hmm.
what their spirit's
Hmm.
path
Hmm.
is when they see that. Like they'll
Hmm.
see a sequence of numbers that
Hmm.
they'll often see.
Hmm.
And
I
it's
saw.
like God saying, hey, you're on the right path. You're doing the right thing.
Hmm. I saw a prophetic movie recently called "Failure to Launch" with
Yes, I've heard of it.
Matthew McConaughey, and in that movie, it's all about love,
Yeah.
but his life is in disarray because his love, he's not in the right lane. So nature begins to rebel against him. He gets bit by a chipmunk,
Oh,
a dolphin, and some kind of lizard, and that lizard was a blizzard of peace. But even he went after him. And it wasn't until he got his life arranged with his true love, did the animal kingdom begin to be gentle with him and not attack him anymore. So is that in that frame, is can animals sense if your spirit is evil?
well, first of all, there aren't any evil spirits. Those don't exist. Those
Oh,
have been utilized. Fear is the biggest motivator, to motivate the masses. And interestingly enough, Daniel, if you go back to the Nuremberg trials after World War II, when the Nazi officers were on trial, they were asked in cross-examination or by attorneys, how did you get the Germans, who were some of the most well-educated people on the planet, how did you get them to turn so evil and do all this evil stuff to people? And the Nazi generals said, fear. Fear is the best motivator. We've all been surrounded by a lot of fear this year with all this pandemic stuff. And it motivates people in a way like none other. So it's been used by civilizations and religions to motivate and control the masses. Mm-hmm. And so evil spirits don't exist. But another side of your question about can dogs and animals sense things? Absolutely. Dogs can sense even disease. They have dogs that can detect cancer. And you hear stories about my German Shepherd found, liver cancer or something in my husband because he kept sniffing that area of the body. They can tell. It's pretty amazing. Horses are used to heal a lot. I know a woman who has cancer. She has brain cancer, and she's been going to get healings from the horses. And it's pretty remarkable to watch what the horses do with her. I mean, they go right to the spot in her head. They come up to greet her, and they are right in the spot in her head where the tumor is. Mm-hmm. It's fascinating. Mm-hmm. And it's like they don't nip at her, but it's like they're air nipping at it, and then they spit it out, and then they'll come back and they'll air nip some more. I've seen videos of it. It's fascinating to watch. Mm-hmm. So yes,
one of our previous guests, who I know personally, Tom Horn, I think he runs a Little Ponies Ranch, and they bring abused children there. They say that ponies really get them to, sort of come down from the horribleness of their situation. So yeah, I do agree with you. But I'm ready for a big, gigantic, nasty, drawn-out battle with you. But you're so nice, it's kind of hard to do. Let's rewind the tape here, and let me challenge you on the non-existence of evil spirits. Now, geez, there's haunted houses. There's
but they're not evil. It's just spirits that don't know they're dead.
Well, now poltergeists. Okay, what about them? Those are the nasty ones.
Well, poltergeists are usually a vortex of something that's going on, and it's a phenomenon where it's like a wormhole almost. And spirits aren't nasty. What's happening is oftentimes when someone dies and they go back into non-physical, because I've witnessed that we live many, many, many lifetimes. I mean, I can do past life scans on people. I've done many of them, countless of them, where we get information that we can corroborate with online historical data that there's no way I could know this stuff. And the thing about spirits is when somebody dies and they go back into non-physical, it's a lot of effort for a spirit to be in our dense reality, in our dense human reality. So sometimes the spirit will have trouble controlling what's happening because they're trying to control air in a dense reality. Does that make sense? It takes a lot of energy for a spirit to be in our human reality. And I say that when I raise my vibrational level to the level of spirit, it's like throwing an electrical current through a bowl of pudding. It's going to slow it down because of the mass of the bowl of pudding. So it's an analogy that I use a lot to give us some sense of how, well, it's the old, water vapor ice equation. You've got different densities of the same molecules. They can be ice, they can melt into water, they can evaporate into steam. Same thing.
Jesus commanded his disciples to cast out devils. Would devils be considered an evil spirit?
Well, I think, again, you've got to go back to the translation. And so much has been lost.
I went to it, and that's what it says.
Lost in the translation. But if you look at the original Greek and then it's translated into other languages, oftentimes those things that we take as evil have a different meaning in the original writing of the Bible. And certainly the Bible's been edited, the King James Version, it's been edited, parts of the Gnostic Gospels, lots of parts of the Bible, the Dead Sea Scrolls, all of that. It's been edited over the years. And in the translation, some of it has been changed that we perceive to be something that's evil that oftentimes was not in the original writing, is what I found.
So you're saying that some nefarious force wanted to put some evil spirits in there for...
Well, fear controls the masses. Yeah. And it's hard for us to wrap our heads around that when that's something that we've been taught and been raised with, to even consider that perspective. I mean, certainly there are lots of people who take the Bible literally, and then when you go to biblical scholars and they can go back and they can see, okay, here's the original Aramaic interpretation,
okay, Julie.
And here's what it is today.
There's documented evidence out there of people being clawed and scratched in the middle of the night. Is that their own mind doing it, or is that an evil spirit?
I don't think it's an evil spirit. It might be a spirit trying to get their attention. All spirits are pure love.
If somebody's clawing you, I mean, there's got to be, maybe you could, wouldn't they just like tap you on the shoulder if they wanted to, say, hey, man, you get up and have a little conversation?
If it's a spirit that can't control their energy and it comes in like that, all spirits are pure love, because we're all a spark of the divine, and the divine is pure love. So when we think about how I envision it, Daniel, is imagine we turn into water and we jump into the Colorado River. And we become one with the Colorado River. That's how I envision spirit. Spirit, God, is all pure love. We are a spark of the divine. We have things that are right and wrong in human form, and we need to survive, because we're here having the human experience. But in the spirit world, everything's just an experience. But we judge things as right or wrong. That's what I believe and what I've witnessed. Over a long time.
So I was at a church one time, and there was like a prayer line going on, and the person in front of me fell down to the ground, started slithering like a snake and foaming at the mouth, and was cursing. Was that a gentle spirit just saying, I want to be part of the group, I want to be part of the chorus? Or, I mean, if they're...
In that situation, I think what that is that's that person's interpretation of the energy that they're feeling inside of them, and that's how they're reacting.
Was that pure love, foaming at the mouth and cursing? Was that pure love coming out of there? I'm just...
Well, it was
maybe
how
I'm an
that
uneducated
person
cowboy
was choosing
here.
to interpret that energy that was coming in, and that person was coming at it from a place where that's what they needed to experience. We all create our own reality. So energy, if energy came into that person, that was, any spirit is pure love. There is no such thing as evil spirits.
I interpreted it as that person was possessed. So I didn't think there was more interpretations than that, but maybe.
Yeah.
But the people that are watching in the live chat, for those on the YouTube channel, there's a chat on the right. If you're watching from the website player, it's on the left. A little link there says live chat. You can put your questions in there. But for those in the live chat, has anyone ever seen an evil spirit? Let's put it that way. I want to see what they got to say about it. Now, somebody said, well, what about Jeffrey Dahmer? Wasn't he evil? Now, I guess we're talking about, can people be evil, or can they be possessed? I don't know if there's a difference there.
Well, they're evil, and he was obviously mentally not right. And so what happens is, most people of our generation, when you say, who's the worst person that's ever lived, and it's usually a Hitler. Maybe Dahmer is more for somebody who perhaps is younger. And it's hard for us, again, to wrap our minds around the thought of Hitler's spirit being in heaven after he was such a monster when he was alive. But that was what his spirit was experiencing in this lifetime. And all that snarky personality, all those snarky personality traits stay with the body when somebody dies. So I'll have people say to me, well, I don't want my mother's spirit around me. My mother was awful. My mother was abusive, or my mother was awful. And I'll say, your mother's spirit is pure love. All that behavior stayed with the body when she died. And if you trace back people who are, quote, evil,
Mm-hmm.
most of the time they've been abused. They have some kind of other issues that are in play, and their spirit wants to experience that. Perhaps in a past life they were abused, and they come in this lifetime and they want to experience what it's like to be the abuser, because our spirit expands with each lifetime.
Mm-hmm. Um, you were talking about, I don't know if you mentioned mother-in-law. Maybe for some people that could be like somebody that they don't want coming back, right?
Right,
The
right,
evil mother-in-law, because there's like a
right.
euphemism with that. Although my mother-in-law is absolutely wonderful, but you reminded me of a song from Luke Combs, and in the song he dumps his girlfriend. He goes, and I ain't got to see my ex future mother-in-law anymore. So I mean,
Yeah.
so that was a real world. He wasn't looking in the afterlife to be haunted. He was being haunted in this
Yeah.
life. Unfortunately,
Well, and
he
there's and you know how many homes, especially the new ones, and you go in and the realtor will say, and this is the mother-in-law suite, and it's on a separate wing. It's like removed from the family. So yeah, I
yeah.
think that's a very real thing. But most of the time when that happens with mother-in-laws that are snarky, they're just really insecure. And they're feeling like they're losing control over their child who's now married and has somebody,
Mm-hmm.
who's perhaps more important to them in their life, and they're creating their own family. So there's always an emotional component to all of those situations.
Okay, so the question we posed earlier, one of the fun things I like to do, the audience they're in there chatting, listening to the show, and all of a sudden, bam, I'll hit them with a question to see if they're paying attention. So
Yeah.
so here's a couple, and the question was, have you seen an evil spirit? And this person says, yes, I've seen several. Another one says, I've seen angels as well. I don't know if this is an answer. It says most are just posers. Uh, Somebody said there's evil out there. So, you
Yeah,
know,
I think evil is a human component, certainly. And then the other thing to remember, too, that's really important in this conversation, Daniel, is that, again, I know I sound like a broken record, frame of reference. We see a spirit that looks like a gargoyle, and we think, oh my God, it's evil. Well, gargoyles were never evil. They've come down through the centuries, and we think of them as an evil looking thing now.
mm-hmm,
But certainly somebody raised in an indigenous tribe in the middle of the Amazon, they see a gargoyle, they're not going to think it's evil because they don't know what it is.
mm-hmm,
And so the other thing is we're trying to interpret a different reality of spirit through our human lens. And sometimes there isn't a frame of reference. And when we can't come up with a frame of reference, it's
mm-hmm,
scary for us
mm-hmm.
because we don't know what it is, and we don't have anything to compare it to.
Yeah. And I see a number of folks are saying in the live chat, they're saying they felt evil, and I have
Sure.
certainly felt
Oh
evil. So,
yeah.
what part of the human existence feels and can recognize evil?
Our intuition. That people will say, use your gut. You have a gut feeling.
Mm-hmm,
I don't need to be walking down this dark alley by myself
mm-hmm,
in the middle of the night. It just doesn't feel good.
mm-hmm,
And pay attention to that. Follow that.
mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
interesting you said that, because in 2 weeks we're having on the program Kim Chesney. Her title or her topic is radical intuition. So, I mean, I always felt like if you kind of hone your skill a little bit, pay a little bit more attention, and I usually refer to those coincidences as synchronicities.
Absolutely.
And I've had numbers of those, and I can't really
Sure.
discount them. Now,
Sure.
synchronicity is not in the Bible, but I believe it is a real thing, and it's almost as if it's almost like a guidepost of some sort. And certainly we're all looking for them, especially when we come to a why in our life. You go this way or you can go that way, and you're looking. I think that's when most people are they're most spiritual, because they want to know the answer. They want somebody to tell them. There's been times in my life when I've actually gotten direct messages when I asked a question, or when I wasn't even expected. I got an answer to a question I didn't even ask. So I can say things like that do happen. So I'm not sure
Well,
about.
and the other thing too, Daniel, that's important to note, I think, along those lines is oftentimes people become the most spiritual when they have trials and tribulations, because they don't feel like they have anywhere else to turn. And that is all part of the equation as well. And none of us want to create something that feels bad, but sometimes that's what it takes for us really to pay attention to find, our center, and to be able to pay attention to our gut, and to be able to pray and be able to give up control and say, okay, God, get me out of this, or help me with this. I surrender. Help me with this. And that's oftentimes when the most miraculous healings take place, because there's always an emotional component that's in place before any disease or illness sets in, 100% of the time. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes I'll hear from someone who has led a very full life, perhaps really busy, and now they have cancer and the treatments are not going well. And they start praying and they start meditating and they start getting more connected to spirit, to whatever that is for them. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes that helps them heal. Sometimes the healing is death. In this book, Death is But a Dream, in these dreams, people who've lived lives, like he talks about, there's a crooked detective who's one of the stories. And I mean, this guy was he was a crooked detective. He stole and he framed people and he did stuff like that. And so at the end of his life, he was having these dreams about the victims, the people that he had victimized. And it helped create healing for him at the end of his life, so that when he died, he was at peace. It was fascinating. It's fascinating reading it. I highly recommend. I say my book's the yin and his book's the yang, Dr. Kerr's book. It's the yin and the yang of what happens. There's lots of information out there about the afterlife and the phases of grieving and even near-death experiences, but there isn't much information about what happens as we're dying. My book hits it from the spirit world. Dr. Kerr's book hits it from the medical human side of the equation, and it's the same thing. The parallels are just uncanny of what I see in my mind's eye as I'm working with families who have a loved one who's dying, and what his research shows.
When somebody has an exorcism, what is being cast out? Their perception of them being possessed by a demon, or an actual demon?
Yes, it's their perception. Yes.
So basically, you're saying the exorcist is just convincing them that they're crazy.
Well, the person believes that they need a priest to come in and do an exorcism in order for them to feel better. And the body's always going to follow what the brain tells it, whether the brain believes it or not. I think a great example of that, Daniel, is think of a time when you watched a scary movie on TV. Well, your brain knew it was pretend, but your heart might have felt like it was getting ready to jump out of your chest at any moment. The body was following what the brain didn't believe, but it was reacting to it. And so often that will happen. My parish, interestingly enough, here in Birmingham, has had several phone calls from families who believe that one of their family members is possessed during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And so they refer them to a mental health expert. Mm-hmm. And the priest will pray with them, which helps. But they also, the suicide rates are skyrocketing, and the alcoholism rates are skyrocketing, and things like that, with people being in lockdown in different parts of the country. Mm-hmm. And so it's been fascinating to hear those stories. And my pastor, who's been a priest for 50 years, I said, have you ever had a call like that before? He said, never, not in my 50 years, until the lockdown with the pandemic.
Well, speaking of that, can you see if somebody has COVID?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What does that look like?
It looks like watery beef broth in their energy field. So imagine I've got a hologram of them in my mind's eye. Bacterial infections have a kind of a fuchsia color, more pink than purple. And viral infections look like watery beef broth to me. And so that's what COVID looks like in their energy field. And so I push it from the bottom up through the top of their head and help their body heal. No doctor and no healer can heal anybody. It's not possible. We help people heal themselves. We all have the capacity to heal ourselves. If you have a surgeon that has back-to-back cases and they're the same procedure and both patients are really healthy, let's say somebody's got a torn meniscus. So the surgeon's doing 2 torn meniscus surgeries back-to-back. One heals great. The other one gets an infection and doesn't heal right. Right? It's always our spirit's prerogative to utilize the healing in a way that's going to best facilitate whatever it is our spirit is exploring. And so doctors are 60% accurate. That's not huge. Just a little bit over 50-50. And healers are the same way. I always tell my clients the healing happens on the energetic level. It will integrate into your body. That may happen instantly. It may take days, weeks, months. It may need some kind of complementary care. But certainly at the end of the day, it's always the person's spirit's prerogative to utilize the healing in a way that's going to best facilitate whatever they're exploring. And it's not just with healing, it's with everything. You're exploring what it's like to wear a white hat and a white shirt tonight. I'm exploring what it's like to wear a black turtleneck and a Christmas pin.
Well, I'm not really exploring. This is this is what I do every Saturday night. I mean, this hat. In fact, this hat never comes off. I shower, drive down, whatever. It's just stuck there. So if COVID looks like greasy, some kind of broth,
watery beef broth.
What does the common cold look like?
The common cold has more of a grayish color to it. Again, it has like a broth consistency to it because it's a virus. Viruses look kind of like broth to me in the energy field. Yeah. And bacterial infections have like a fuchsia color to them. But the cold, rhinoviruses, there are a bazillion different rhinoviruses. So they can be different intensities of color. But I force it out through the top of the person's head. And then I say, take vitamin C and zinc, 1,000 milligrams of C. I like the ester C because it's buffered. It doesn't upset the stomach. 50 of zinc, 8 to 10,000 IUs of D3. You want to do the zinc and the vitamin C 3 times a day when you're feeling punky. It's the best thing. It's the best immune booster out there. My alma mater, the Ohio State University, did a study on vitamin C and zinc. I want to say it was in the early 80s. And they talked about what an immune booster it is. And interestingly enough, I had LASIK on my eyes, Daniel, 20 years ago. And I had to have my right eye redone. I had my eyes fixed for distance. And I had to have it redone after about 5 years. And the ophthalmologist said, do you take vitamin C? And I said, yeah, a lot of it every day. And he said, don't do it for 6 months. And I said, why? And he said, because it helps the body heal so well. And what we're trying to do with the LASIK is we want to form a scar on the eyeball because it changes how the light's refracted. So he said, stay off vitamin C for 6 months. And it worked. I haven't had to have it redone. I thought that was really interesting.
Well, besides being able to look at someone and do a health scan, like you say, can you look at somebody and say something wild? Let me think of something wild. You look at them, you see maybe if they're a member of Antifa. Is that something you can see?
No, depending on what they're wearing.
If they're wearing a black mask,
they're dressed in black.
Well, if they have a skateboard and a black mask, I think I can make that. I wouldn't need no special powers for that. I didn't know.
No, I don't see it, but I can ask. Is Daniel a member of Antifa? Then I'll get an answer, boom, in my head. And you can get that with any question. Is it in my? And I like to preface a question if we're asking it about ourselves, we're looking for guidance. I like to preface it with, is it in my best interest to ... finish the sentence, because spirits are really literal. Daniel, and they're always going to give us the correct answer, but we want to be specific, especially if we're looking for advice. For example, if you say, hey, let's say your deceased mom, you said your mom's deceased. Hey, Mom, am I going to enjoy watching the movie? And you get a yes that pops into your head immediately. And then you're watching some movie later tonight, and it's atrocious. You're going, Mom, what was up with that? Well, the way you asked the question, her answer was correct because it could pertain to any movie you're going to watch for the rest of your life. If you say, "Hey, Mom, am I going to enjoy watching, I don't know what, uh, Christmas 2,
Mm-hmm.
Christmas Vacation
Mm-hmm.
tonight on TV?" You've been way more specific. And so that Spirit's always going to give you the correct answer. How
Mm-hmm.
applicable it is going to be predicated on how you ask the question. So you
Okay.
want to remember, be really specific if you're looking for guidance. And then remember, it's the first thing that pops in your head
Okay.
within a second.
Okay. So we asked the question, random question. If can you look and see if somebody's a member of Antifa? And like I said, if they got a skateboard and a black mask and looking
Yeah.
anorexic, wearing skinny jeans, then I could probably make that discernment. Well, let's just say you were watching CNN.
Yeah.
Can you tell if Wolf Blitzer is lying?
Yeah, I could ask. And we'll we all have a gut feeling when something doesn't feel right,
Mm-hmm.
something doesn't sound right. We're like, yeah, I don't know that I buy that. And then you ask Spirit, is that accurate?
Mm-hmm.
You get a yes or a no.
I mean,
Or
is that
you say
audible?
what's accurate. I mean, it's really that simple. Our heads are satellite dishes. We have access to universal intelligence at all times. You can ask any question of any spirit, whether you knew them or not. You want to talk to Aristotle, you want to talk to Mother Teresa, you want to talk to who do you want to talk to? You think of them, you're in contact with them, you just start talking with them.
All right. Somebody wrote in, says, Julie, do you ever use a Ouija board?
No.
And why
I
not?
did when I was a kid,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't need it now. I mean, it's not necessary.
Oh boy, that reminds me of another brother story.
Yeah.
When I was about 5 years old, three of my brothers were in the bedroom upstairs. Little did I know they were playing with a Ouija board,
Yeah.
and I was mad because they're going to leave the little kid out. Little
Right.
Daniel, he don't get in on the fun. Or it was the spooky fun.
Yeah.
Next thing I know, they're running down the stairs and they're running out the door, and I said, "What?" I said, "What happened?" They said, some kind of spirit was started moving that board, and they freaked out and they ended up burning it. So I don't advise. It, you said earlier that there's no evil spirits, but somehow I think there is.
I know, but that's just that's your frame of reference. That's how we've all been raised to
You
think
say
that
somebody
they're
lied
evil.
to me, told me there's evil spirits out there. They're all good and fun creatures.
They're all spirits are pure love. And it's just pure love energy because we're all made in the image and likeness of God. And I think in the Bible where it says that, Daniel, people think, okay, God looks like you, maybe a longer beard. And he's sitting on a cloud someplace and he looks like some version of Father Time, like
Mm-hmm.
Dumbledore in the Harry Potter movies or Gandalf in the Lord of the Rings movies. When in essence, what I believe is we're made in the image and likeness of God in spirit form.
Mm-hmm.
God is everywhere all at the same time. We have the ability to be different places. We are a spark of the divine.
I think the
And
Bible.
it says that in the Bible.
Well, yeah, I think the Bible says no man has seen God at any time.
Yeah, well, that's what the Jews believe.
Mm-hmm.
The Jews call God Ein Sof because they say that our human minds can't comprehend what God is. And in the Christian religions especially, we've humanized the concept of God so that again we can have some frame of reference and try and understand and have a relationship with spirit,
Mm-hmm.
with God, with
Mm-hmm.
the spirit of God.
Mm-hmm.
And the source.
The Bible does describe God as love.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. And there's two kinds of fear. And I think this is what we're brought up to think that things are hard and we need to struggle. And those that succeed, they worked really hard for their companies or their houses or their cars or their material things. And the thing to remember that's really important, Daniel, is there's two kinds of fear. An emotion's either based in love, which feels good or at least feels neutral, or it's based in fear. And there's two kinds of fear. There's rational fear and there's irrational fear. Rational fear is something's going to kill you. You better change the conditions. Get out of the street before the truck runs you over because it's going to kill you if an 18-wheeler runs you over. Irrational fear is what equates most of our thoughts that feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
And irrational fear is based in a limiting belief that's false. So when we have an irrational fear, and I've come up with this, I call it a trick, but it's a technique. All you have to do when you're feeling bad, that's your spirit. Our spirits are internal GPS systems. And when we feel badly, that's our spirit saying, hey, you're out of alignment. Look at this from a different perspective, because spirit's pure love. So the technique that I've come up with, Daniel, is I call the 2-minute rule. And here's how it goes. You're feeling badly, like, oh my God, Antifa's out there and they're burning down whatever town.
Right.
And you say to yourself, is this going to kill me in the next 2 minutes? If it is, that's a rational fear. Get out of the road before the truck runs you over. If it's not, that's an irrational fear based in a limiting belief. You switch that frequency to a higher frequency, it feels better. And when we're in alignment with our spirit based in love, at least neutral, we can receive guidance from God and spirit. It's like when somebody's all wound up, you know how people get distraught and it's like they're in a tailspin. Well, spirit can't communicate with you because it doesn't broadcast on that channel. It's like trying to listen to classic rock on the talk radio station. You're not going to get it because it's not what they're broadcasting. Does that make sense?
It does. Now, I'm going to use some old cowboy wisdom, too. I believe there's a third type of fear, and it's where it says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And I don't believe that means be afraid of him, but acknowledging that he does exist and that really keeps society in check, because without that certain fear, then we treat each other a lot worse than we normally would. It actually puts us in a frame of mind that think we're loved, even though we're imperfect. We need to love others who may be imperfect as well.
Exactly. And back to what we were discussing earlier about that is usually the come to Jesus time for a lot of people when they're distraught and they're saying, okay, I give up. And then they relax trying to control everything. And that's when God can work through them and with them and guide them. So I think I agree with you on that.
Right above me is from your screenshot from your website, says Ask Julie Ryan podcast. What's on there?
The podcast is a 2-hour weekly call-in show that's syndicated, and then we take out the commercials and release it as a podcast. And so people call in and ask me stuff. They want me to scan them. They want me to scan their dog or their pet. They want to get a read from spirit about whether they should take a job or move to a different city, or love life questions. Can we talk to their deceased loved ones? Can we talk about a past life thing? Can I tell how close to death their loved one is? I'm a buffet of psychicness. So it's really fun. We have a great time on there, and people call from all over. They call from all over the world. Usually it's in the Americas or someplace in Europe, but even Europe, it's 8 to 10 Eastern. So they're up in the middle of the night when they're calling in from Europe.
You've been watching the video of me for about an hour and a half now. When you scan somebody, do you have to have a time when you decide to scan, or have you already scanned me?
No, I don't scan anybody without their permission.
Oh.
As I mentioned, I turn it on and off at will. I believe it's an invasion of their privacy. So if somebody wants, like, for instance, if you say, can you scan my brother? Because I know you got a bunch of brothers. Can you scan my brother, Fred? I'll telepathically ask Fred permission. If Fred gives it to me, I'll scan him. If he won't, I won't scan him. I can, but I don't, because I believe it's an invasion of his privacy. I operate under HIPAA, truly. And so anything that I discuss with a client is completely confidential. The other thing that's interesting, let's say your brother Fred, do you even have a brother Fred?
No.
Okay. All right. So I'm making Fred up. So
Okay.
let's say
I'm with you.
Your brother Fred doesn't want me to scan him, but we can talk to his spirit, because we communicate with spirits that are alive all the time, that are attached to bodies. So I can have a conversation with Fred, and we can ask him questions and things and get answers. And I don't have a problem with that, because it would be similar to talking to somebody who has pneumonia, and they're going to tell you what they want you to know, but you're not going to go look at their x-ray without their permission.
Right.
So that's how I do the workaround with that.
So that would be some sort of spiritual invasiveness, and you don't do
Absolutely.
that. I mean, you don't.
I
It's like a
don't I
peeping
don't do
tom.
that. It's an ethical thing with me. I just don't believe it's right.
Hmm.
I think it's wrong.
Okay. Uh, when the vaccine comes out, are you going to take it?
No.
Oh, do tell Julie.
I have a 99.9% chance of getting well if I get it.
Hmm.
So why would I get it?
Well, is there any other reason that you wouldn't take it?
I have a 99.9% chance of getting well
Okay.
if I catch COVID.
Okay.
So that to me doesn't give me any reason to take it.
Okay. Do you normally take the flu shot?
Never.
And
Same
why?
thing. I
Same
mean,
thing.
they're like, it depends on, it's a guess. First of all, they're guessing what the strain of flu is going to
Hmm.
be, and they can range from being 10% effective to like 40% effective. I'm in good health. I take vitamin C, zinc, D3. I get sunshine. I get exercise. I don't need it.
Hmm.
So no, I don't take them.
Well, I'm feeling great because this summer I got a lot of sunshine. I was intentional because I wanted all the vitamin D I could get, and
That's right.
that's probably got me through the COVID early rollout. Man, I'm not going to take the vaccine, but I'm going to donate my shot to anybody who wants it. So I mean, I know I'm going to give it. The ultimate sacrifice is the one scheduled for yourself. Give it to maybe not a friend, maybe somebody's done you wrong. Let them have it.
Well, yeah, and there's lots of information out
Hmm.
there about all of that. That's above my pay grade. All I can do is decide what feels right for me. And I wouldn't tell anybody to or not. I think you've got to pay attention to your own gut on that and read the information, be
Hmm.
informed, be educated on it, and then make your decision from there. But back to the sunshine and the D3, it's
Hmm.
so important. Most Americans, especially ones that live in the northern part of the
Hmm.
country, are vitamin D deficient because they don't get as much sunshine, especially in the winter. So it's really important to take that D3, and you want to do 8 to 10,000 IU's a day.
Mm.
Those little teeny tiny ones. I get mine at Costco. Yeah, they look like little
Wow.
teeny tiny little gel caps. And you really there's been so
Hmm.
many studies. There have been so many studies, Daniel, about how vitamin D3 deficiencies can cause all kinds of illness,
Hmm.
cancer, all kinds of
Hmm.
stuff. And it's
It
just because we're deficient in D3.
Speaking of Costco, the wife tried to get me to go there for a couple of years, and she finally got me there, and now I'm a Costco man.
Oh, it's my favorite store.
I'm a
God,
Costco man. I got Costco raisins. I got, what is that? Some brand that makes everything, Highland or something. I can't remember what it is.
yeah, but if the world was coming to an end and we were having like a nuclear winter or something, you want to get inside a Costco before that happens because they got everything you need. They got food, they got beds, they got linens, they got clothes, they got whatever.
Big screen TVs.
Toys, big screen TVs,
You
absolutely.
got you
Batteries,
have to have one of those to make it through the apocalypse. That's what I found out.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Julie Ryan, we're getting near to the end of the broadcast. Anything you'd like to say about your website or books? You go right ahead.
Sure. I have Angelic Attendants. What really
Oh,
happens as we transition from this life into the next, and
okay.
it's a book everybody needs to read it. Anybody who's ever lost a loved one or anybody who's ever going to lose a loved one. That's pretty much everybody can read. And then I have Angel Messages for Kids,
Mm-hmm.
which is a picture book. It's got darling illustrations in it. And my newest book comes out next week,
Oh,
and it's called Angel Messages for Dogs. And it's a children's book as well.
wow.
And those came about from a lot of moms that said to me, "Can you please come up with a way that I can talk to my child about what happens when a loved one dies?" And we say, "Well, grandma's in heaven." And the little Johnny, who's 3, saying, "No, she's not. She's asleep in that box over there,"
Whoa.
when they're at the funeral home. Or
Sleep in the box.
how, yeah, how
Ooh.
children have visits from deceased loved ones, and they know information about the deceased loved one that this kid can't read yet. I mean, they don't know. They don't know this information, And then children know past life stuff too. So that's how these books originated. So the new one, Angel Messages for Dogs, is darling. And if you go on my website, askjulieryan.com, everything's there. All the information to my shows and my books. And if you want to schedule an appointment, sign up for my blog. That's a question somebody submits online, Daniel, and I answer it every week.
Wow.
And so it's really fun.
All right. Here's a question. Do you ever get angry?
Not very often. I used to, but I'm filled with spirit. So yeah, it's that Holy Spirit coursing through my veins. I can get frustrated, but I use the 2-minute rule to get myself out of it.
Oh, what's that?
I like to stay in Switzerland. What I mentioned before is this going to kill me in the next 2 minutes. What I was telling you before.
Okay. Final. Oh, somebody wants me to ask you, is Sasquatch real? Now, I don't know what that has to do with.
I get a yes on that.
What?
Got a yes on that.
You believe in Bigfoot? You just don't seem like a Bigfoot type.
Is Bigfoot real? Yes, I get a yes.
He's out there. Okay.
Yeah.
If you saw one, would you be able to see if he had like Lyme disease from deer ticks in the forest or something?
Yes, I can. An interesting point about Lyme disease for anybody listening that's been diagnosed with Lyme. Be sure that you don't have a mold issue in your home, because a huge percentage of the time, Daniel, Lyme disease is misdiagnosed mold exposure. Huge percentage of the time. There's a doctor named Andrew Heyman, MD. He's head of functional medicine at GW University in Virginia. And he is, just look him up, Andrew Heyman, MD. He's got lots of YouTubes and stuff. And he treats so many people that have been diagnosed with Lyme, and they don't have Lyme. They have huge mold exposure issues. So just wanted to throw that in there.
Well, I didn't know what to think about you having you on the show, but since you're a Bigfoot believer, I think I made the right choice.
Okay, good.
All right, Julie Ryan, I appreciate you coming on the Edge television broadcast. What did you think about it?
Oh, it was fabulous. A lot of fun.
All right.
Great questions.
And I love it. I always try to get the audience involved with it. This program will be edited a little bit and be out on the YouTube and on our website, and you have a permanent web page and podcast all associated with it. It takes about an hour or so you can check back the website and see what actually was going on back here.
Are you going to send me the links?
Oh, you get all the links. Yeah, I was sending all the links.
Send me the links. And then I'd like to have you on my show. My show's a call-in show, but I'd like to have you on in the first segment, which is about 12 minutes. And we'll talk about you and your work and your show. And it's a blast. And I'll have you on once this is available. All right, when do you want to set that up now, or do you want to do it over email later?
No, let's do it over email. I never I don't make spur of the moments commitments.
Okay. All right. Well, I'd love to have you on, and I
will be on your show.
This.
I will be on your show.
We'll cross promote it.
Okay. All right, Julie Ryan. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas to you too.
All righty. Bye. Bye, everybody.
All right, everybody.